Hello, I'm Chris, and this is going to be a guide on the 26 plus 2 3 TC boom plus 1 monastery. This is not the tightest of build orders, but it's still on the advanced side because you do need to push your deer and you do need to be quite efficient with your Dark Age economy. This build will not always be the best build for the situation, but if you don't like your situation, if you're, for example, team game flank and you want to boom, this is a great way to do it. It gives you defense, it gives you a monastery. It gives you the eco to Siege Workshop if you want to, or a second monastery to defend whatever you're being pushed with. So it's a very, very good boom for more defensive play if you're not entirely sure what you want to be doing. In lower level 1v1s, this can also be quite effective. However, with the current scout meta, it might not be the best. Still, if you're not great at doing your 3TC booms, this guide should give you some good insight. So we're going to put the build order on screen now. What we're talking about is using 8 sheep, so 4 starting sheep in 2 groups of 2, and 3 deer. This is the minimum food you will spawn with. You might spawn with cows, which will give you extra 50 food if you have 3 cows instead of 4 sheep, and that could happen twice. And also, you could also have 4 deers, which is actually quite a big bonus. We're going to use Goths as one of the most generic civs right now before they get some massive overhaul that might eventually happen. But yeah, for now, generic eco. You might have a civ with a better economy bonus. Just a quick reminder that there's a new AoE2 Arena Discord channel. Follow the link in the description, go to the Discord, go to the set role channel and pick AoE2. There are other roles you could pick if you're interested in those other games or topics, but that's the new place where we hang out. So, one of the easiest things to do is to just jump right into it and we'll explain as we go. So cure TC, build our 2 houses, 2 villagers in one on the other. Bring a sheep under our TC. And the first thing we want to do is we want to scout around our base, we want to find our deer, and if we can easily access our other sheep, we want to go and get those. Houses are built, so we'll send our villagers to the sheep. We could have shift queued that, but you know, don't have to. Use your sheep to scout around. Your deer are usually reasonably close to your TC, so around this kind of ring. So for example, we do not need to scout out here, for example. And there's our deer. So something that you may do differently, and most people will, is I actually prefer to push my deer after taking the first sheep. This will give me 6 villagers taking the deer, as opposed to 2 or 3 when the rest of them are taking a boar if I push it later. So you get the least food rot taking your deer now. Keep sheep scouting around your base. You can be quite lazy with this, you don't have much going on. So 6 sheep, 4 wood, or in this case 6 on food under the TC. We know where both our boars are, let's just discover those black areas in case we forget. If you're taking your deer this way, then you need to occasionally force drop. But after 1 or 2 deer, it should not be a problem anymore. It's also fine to kill a deer further away from the TC when you have this many villagers on it. Obviously, it's more efficient to kill under TC, but everyone makes mistakes now and then. I do have a quick tips video on how to push deer, and I will link that in the description. Which is basically, go behind the deer, roughly in the direction you want to push the deer, directly behind, and use the follow hotkey. So now we have our 4 on wood. Now we want to add another one to food. It depends on when we need our boar, and if we need our boar now, then we go and get it. Usually about when you're taking the last animal, for example if you just kill a sheep, then that's usually the time to get a boar. Need a garrison. After that we need a villager to build houses. And we want enough houses to get us to 35 pop. Again, a lot of people will build houses at different times, and that's all fine. After pushing our deer, we want to go forward and see who our opponent is. So that's going to be 20, 25, 30, 35. Bring all our sheep in. After that, we want to send villagers to berries. I like to have 9 on the boar under our TC when we start having villagers on that. 8 is fine. So I usually like to add that house builder over later. When I have 9 on my boar, that's usually when I'm quite happy. You'll have more later when you send villagers to take the other board, for example. When the boar's about 160 HP, you can go get the next one. If it's close, 100 HP can even be fine. If it's quite far, 160 HP. Sorry, food left in the boar. This boar wasn't too far, so we'll probably have a little bit of extra food left in this boar. As long as we're roughly close. We're aiming for our 4 on berries, and we should be able to hit that soon. So we have our 4 on berries, and now we're going to have our now 9 on boars. And shift Q your berry villagers. And 1 more, so we're 19 pop. So just to make sure they don't wander off or forget about them, I'll queue them to the house. And we're going to build a lumber camp now with the next 5 villagers, or 4 villagers. We're going to do the next 5 on wood, however, you just kind of have to evaluate it by looking at your lumber camps at the time. For example, this is a very good lumber camp, whereas this one, it'll be okay. But I'd rather have more villagers on the better lumber camp, the one that's more of a C shape surrounding the lumber camp, to mean it's more efficient for longer. And here's where we add farms as and when we can afford them. We're looking for 4 or 5. 4 is usually good, and adding a 5th one a little bit later, for example when you are already up to feudal age. That's usually a good start. Personally, I like to just manually watch my lumberjacks. You can shift queue them for better effect. I just don't do that personally. You'll also notice from previous tutorials I do actually use the new waypoint behavior as opposed to the old one from before. Let's add the 5th one here. So we're going to have 9 on wood, 4 on one, 5 on the other, doesn't really matter. And then we want to do 2 on gold. I would like to add a TC perhaps here, and perhaps here on wood. If you can pull it off, then try and make sure you add a TC to gold, your main gold. Keep that as secure as possible. So we want to look for close by relics, because even in a team game you do want to nab the close ones. Also that villager pathing, it gets me every time. So we want to queue up our 2 villagers. We want to decide who's going to build our market and blacksmith. I would like to build them up against the back of the map because those are quite important buildings. We could use them as house buildings if we want. Sorry, for the wall buildings. But we don't really have any villagers near. I'm not too fussed about that. Let me just move these so they're a little bit less crazy. So, market blacksmith back here. It's always nice to have important buildings protected at the back. In case you're wondering about my questionable scouting, yes, I know it's questionable. I've not been playing a lot recently, and I'm not quite in the swing of being able to micro a lot of things while talking and explaining things. Explaining things adds a layer of depth that I'm currently a bit lazy for. Make sure your villagers are constantly taking 1 sheep. I would like to add a 5th one soon, but I think I'm going to wait until we have Poor Scholar. So let's get that sorted. Now we want to do 1 to gold, 1 to wood. If you're in a team game with shared exploration, or your scout's been busy quite early, as soon as you get a market up, then get your scout on auto scout. It's such an OP thing in TGs. It doesn't really matter which order these villagers go. Make sure you queue these villagers to go back to wood. But as long as you have 3 on gold and 10 on wood by the end of the day. And these villagers will go to stragglers. So we'll grab that. And we're going to add a couple of farms. I like to have 4 villagers on the stragglers. Those will help us build our TCs. And double bid axe as soon as possible. As you can tell, this is a reasonably straightforward build. It's pretty simple. You just need to know how to push your deers, take them efficiently, And we're going to have a very simple 3TC. If you need a castle, for example unique units, we're Goths here, so we probably should be going stone. But if you don't, if you're going Arbalest, Seadram, or BBC, or Halbram, any of those combinations that don't really require a castle for a unique tech or something along those lines, then build it on wood if you can. You do want to have a safe and protected base, so for example we want to protect our main gold. So I build it approximately there, I guess. I'm not really a little bit close to the house, but that's not a huge problem. These villagers will not be finished the berries for a little while, but that's fine. So what we're going to do is we want to build a TC with 3 villagers each. And just because I said I would, it adds a little bit more complexity. I will send the villagers to build a TC on stone instead. You do not need stone right away, you could get stone later on, but having a TC there just makes it so much easier. I like to pull up berries from nearby to build the TC. So we want to build our monastery, we want to get bowsaw, and you don't really need heavy plow, it's a little bit overrated. Just make sure when these TCs are built, they go to more appropriate resources. Personally, I do like to build the TCs with 4 villagers each. You could do this for your first builds here, you could do it whenever. So we're going to not grab all the relics even if we can, so we're going to make 1 monk. I don't think we're going to get heavy plow, I do not think it's necessary for the purposes of this build. In some situations I would get heavy plow. I personally like to get it if I'm going to have a very, very long castle age. For example, if I plant out a 4 TC later, if I'm not being pushed, or if I need to make food units to counter my enemy, for example if I don't have good crossbows. However, monks are usually the solution to all our problems. So make sure when you create your monk you send him back. And just build farms. At this stage, we absolutely do not need to buy food. But you can if you want to get, for example, if you wanted to get wheelbarrow a bit earlier. We're going to make a second monk. We're going to pretend you need 2 monks. Just because we're flowing a bit of gold. And we want to mimic a more realistic scenario as well. Building houses is always quite important. Before villager forte or population forte is when I like to start building houses. I don't like to open with them right away. But you can just, if you just wanted to, really. Lots of leniency here. But you have a nice 3TC that shouldn't give you any problems. And it's just very straightforward. You don't really need to go to gold. Keeping a couple of villagers in gold early is fine. But really focusing on getting the wood in and then building farms with it is quite important. As you can see, our resources are looking quite healthy. And if we really wanted, this is when we would buy wheelbarrow, because, you know, 20 farmers, that's quite a lot of farmers to have without having wheelbarrow. And it might be more efficient to get it now than it is to wait until you can afford it. So let's get the food, and let's research wheelbarrow when the food comes in. We do need to build some houses. In fact, we need to build a panic house. Gotta keep our eye on that. That's probably one of the hardest things to keep on top of if you're not paying the most attention in the world. And just keep adding farms. We want, you know, 30 farms as quickly as possible, really. And we have our 2 relics. So that's a nice bonus. So if you're being pushed, you can really just add anything at this point. You have a huge eco. I mean, it's not even minute 20 yet and we have 53 villagers and wheelbarrows coming in. So, if you wanted to, right now we could add a 4 TC if there's absolutely no pressure and you see it fit. Or, if they're pushing us, for example unique unit, we've been defending with monks already. And we could have a second monastery by now. It's very straightforward, you just have to do what you can afford. And it's very simple. As soon as you can spend wood, then spend it. On farms as soon as possible. We already have one of our upbuildings. So a monastery. So something we need to probably think about is which other upbuilding are we going to use. Are we going to use a university or are we going to use a siege workshop? A lot of times I like to have a university, even if I don't particularly need it for ballistics or something along those lines. It could be really useful to get masonry or various other upgrades from, depending on the civ. But most civs you can really get yourself some good use out of it. So around minute 22 is when I like to build that. We're building it a little bit early here, but again, this is all play by ear. Depending on your Dark Age as well, you could have more deer, more food. You could have gone on wood a little bit earlier, for example, have more wood and already be a decent bit ahead of this. And it's quite good to get handcart soon. I like to get handcart soon after getting wheelbarrow. Loom is also quite a nice one to get. And if you really wanted to, if you are on stone, you can send a villager forward and build some outposts. So let's do that. We are Goths, so we get the instant loom, so you can call me a cheat using a civ with an eco bonus. Handcart is not the most essential upgrade, but it really does shine when you have farms that are 2 layers away from TCs. That's when it makes the biggest difference. We have our buildings. We have our eco upgrades, pretty much all of them are now kicking in. We could get heavy plow now if we wanted to gold mining. I like to delay heavy plow just a little bit longer until after I click up, if possible. Just keep making houses, keep making some farms. We need to add more farms. If we're going for heavy food eco, you want at least 40 farms. For example, we're going Huskarls in this case. Or even Halbs. 44 farmers is basically the ideal goal to head for. So it's before minute 24, and this is when we're clicking up. So then we could add a barracks, we can build a castle soon if you need to. You could just, for example, as a complete example, ignore what I'm doing. Sell a bit of resources and just buy a castle if you wanted one really quickly, defend a resource. That's entirely up to you. Although make sure that... wait, are they still carrying? There we go. Make sure that you get that done. So anyway, we're going to stop the demonstration here. So, as I said, very simple, very straightforward. If you're a flank in a TG and you want to boom, you don't know any good strats or you're not in a position to 1 TC, this is a great strategy to do because it lets you boom and gives you that little bit of defense you need. Personally, I would always recommend playing aggressive if you can if you're flank, especially if you're in a worse position. Generally booming to get in a better position won't usually work if they're particularly good at doing 1 TCs. So you need to really focus on picking the right strategy, and this is quite a good generic strategy if you don't really know what to do. But even then, if you still want to boom, there are situations where booming is better. For example, if you're against a civ that's very quick, you might get trushed, or they might do a very fast monk rush. You have a very fragile eco if you do something like a very fast 23+2 3 TC. So this I would recommend. If you have civ with an eco bonus, by all means shorten the population. If you have Indians, you can definitely do 25+2 and still afford the same amount of wood for all of the buildings, including the monastery. And you should be fine to just freestyle this on your own. Very straightforward build. So, hopefully you enjoyed watching this. It's a remake of the original guide. I will leave a link to the description. This is the 26+2 3 TC with 1 monastery is actually the first video I published on the channel, and I originally published it after seeing Stefan regularly using it. Stefan, of course, being a great arena player, and I've always personally felt he played most like myself. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.